Good morning, and welcome once again to Morning Wood with Dilcox. I, of course, am your host, Gregory Dilcox, bringing to you the YouTube show that's much like a woman with crazy eyes. You know it's not going to be any good, but you're just so damn intrigued. As you can see this week, I've foregone the tie and the shirt in lieu of a jersey that's several sizes too small. I understand it's a basketball jersey, and this is, of course, the Super Bowl preview Morning Wood, but I wanted to rep Seattle, so I'm wearing my much too small Sean Kemp jersey, Rain Man, greatest in-game dunker of all time. I grew up a huge Seattle Supersonics fan, and when I was a kid, I desperately wanted this jersey. And back to school shopping, I saw it in JCPenney's, and my father and stepmother said no, which worked out in the end because I found this one at a Salvation Army for $2. Best $2 I've ever spent. Yeah, it's probably about the same size I needed when I was 10 years old, so it might even be the same jersey. Had I had it then, it would have gotten destroyed. But now it sits in my closet, and I wear it when I want to wear something comically small to make myself look even chubbier than I am. But because of my love of the Supersonics, I root for Seattle sports in general. Even though I know nothing about baseball, I'm a Mariners fan. And I've always rooted for the Seahawks. I was rooting for them hard in the Jerome Bettis homecoming Super Bowl. And the refs kind of stuck it to them in that one. Not that I blame the refs for a loss ever, except for in that case there. So this week I'm repping the jersey for my Super Bowl preview show. And if you're not a Super Bowl person, if you're not a football fan, don't worry. I'm hoping the show should be entertaining enough that you'll still enjoy it. I have some fun things planned. One of the biggest stories, of course, is Marshawn Lynch of the Seattle Supersonics, the superstar running back who goes into beast mode. This week he inked a deal with Skittles, a candy he's loved his whole life, and Skittles really didn't need to sign this deal with him because they make all kinds of money off of him for free because he endorses them for free. When he scores touchdowns, his teammates shower him in Skittles. If you are in Seattle for a game, you can order a Beast Mode burger, which comes with a side of Skittles. And there's even a butcher, and this is my favorite one of all, there's a butcher in Seattle that you can get hot sausages that have Skittles inside of them. Now, it sounds terrible, but I would definitely eat it if I was in Seattle, because apparently that's the thing to do in Seattle. But thankfully, Skittles is paying Marshawn Lynch a crazy amount of money to actually now endorse them and get paid for it, which is great for Marshawn Lynch. I can understand why I didn't do this before. He's had some off-the-field issues, but this was the right move by Skittles. They're estimating that Skittles stands on this deal to make $5 million this weekend. So, yeah, that's the right deal. I know they definitely got my money, as Skittles will be featured at our Super Bowl party this year. So I'll be taking Skittles to the face all night, and we'll be doing shots of Skittles every time Marshawn Lynch scores. Yes, that's right, shots of Skittles. We're going to put Skittles in a shot glass and take them to the face because we want diabetes. But no, to be fair, since Marshawn Lynch started eating Skittles in Pop Warner when his mother called them power pellets, I think if you're a young kid out there, eat some Skittles before your Pop Warner games, and you will definitely be a star in a Super Bowl one day. That's the only conclusion I can draw from this story. Another interesting story, once again involving Seattle, because the characters on the team did a much more interesting story, and also, well, a little bit biased here, but porn star Savannah Sampson, I believe is her name, who is best known for gangbang films, wants to shoot a porno with the Seattle defense. Yeah, she wants to shoot a porno with the whole Seattle defense. She wants to see their Legion of Boom. This, of course, is crazy, and the NFL would never allow it because they have an image to uphold. I mean, former players are committing suicide and going crazy because of concussions, but the NFL has a squeaky clean image to uphold. So Commissioner Roger Goodell would, of course, never let this happen. But really, he should. This is good for the league. I mean, there's so many allegations of steroid and other PED abuse coming out from the Seahawks, especially their secondary, that one surefire way to find out is to let them shoot a porno, and we'll see if their testicles are shriveled up. And then we'll know. No loose-capped urine test fail. Roger Goodell, make this happen. Anyway, I said last week that my brother Joseph would be bringing the first installment of a series of videos we're going to call Bachelor Living. But we scrapped that. Joe will be on the show this week. He's picked the Broncos to win, and since I picked the Seahawks to win, we will both tell you why our respective team is going to win. So that should be interesting. That's going to come up in a couple segments. And I have a beautiful young lady named April. She was in the final four for December for Playboy's Miss Social contest, an online contest to win a photo shoot with Playboy. And she's agreed to give her own Super Bowl preview. She's way too good for this show, so I want to thank her right now, before I even get into the childish antics that are coming up in a moment, for doing that. So that'll be great to have her opinion as well here on Morning Wood with Dilcox. One of the other interesting stories about this was Wes Welker laying out Talib in a hit that may or may not be legal, and it's a borderline play with the pick play. I just want to say I love it. I love that there's some edge to this Broncos team, and it's the only edge this Broncos team has. The stories are all about Peyton Manning, and this could be like the end of his arc. His career is winding down. He's going to be considered, I mean, not even going to be, he is one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time. He's in the conversation of greatest quarterbacks of all time, along with Brady from this generation, and Aaron Rodgers could find himself in that category eventually, but I mean, for right now, those two are in the 5, and no one else playing football right now. And that's a big story, and it should be a big story, but I'm glad there's something other than Peyton Manning coming out of Broncos camp, because I'd be bored otherwise. But I'm glad for Welker that he's getting this attention. Welker, one of my favorite players in the league, and I love that it's Bill Belichick who is making the most noise about this. Belichick never liked Wes Welker, which is kind of crazy because that juggernaut offense, when they went perfect throughout the season up until the Super Bowl in New England, was largely based on Wes Welker. I know they had Randy Moss, and of course they had Tom Brady. That team would have been great anyway, but Wes Welker underneath the middle basically covered up the fact that they had no run game. And had Belichick gotten over whatever his dislike of Wes Welker is, I don't know what it is. I mean, he's a charismatic, like, hardworking, great football player, but for whatever reason, Belichick has never liked Welker. He's never endorsed Welker like the way he should. And had he, that game would have been completely different. If Wes Welker is a Patriot this season, then the Patriots are playing Seattle in the Super Bowl. There's not a doubt of it in my mind. So, good for Wes Welker. If the Broncos win, I'll be happy. He's got another Super Bowl ring he can wave in Belichick's face. Not that Belichick doesn't have enough of his own. And, of course, no story is bigger than the Richard Sherman post-game interview with Aaron Andrews. I would love to bring you that story, but of course I don't have the express written consent of both the NFL and Fox Network, and they wouldn't give it to me. which I don't know why. I mean, I'm only the 12th millionth least popular show on YouTube, so you should give me the consent. I did, however, try and get that consent, even though I knew they weren't going to give it to me. I just didn't go through the legal ways. You may not know this about me, but I have a lot of shady friends. Well, let's not call them friends, but let's definitely call them shady acquaintances. And so one of these promised me he could get some official documents giving me express written consent to show NFL footage. So I gladly forked over the money, and this is what I got. A crumpled up document in crayon. Let me just read this document. To whoever, this guy is most definitely okay to play our NFL videos. Sincerely, the NFL and Fox. Who would ever question that? I mean, bulletproof in a court of law. So I can play all the NFL videos I want, as long as they aired on Fox, because express written consent is clearly unquestionable. Sadly enough, not the worst $14 I've ever spent. Yes, $14. But because I'm a problem solver, I found a way around it. You may not know this, but on top of running a website that has tens of readers and having my mother's favorite YouTube show, I'm also a very, very talented artist. My art skills are pretty much unparalleled. So I drew some paper dolls, and I'm going to have a paper doll reenactment in a segment that could become reoccurring, since I will never have the copyrights to anything. But yeah, we're going to do paper doll reenactments. And of course, to completely avoid some legality, I took some liberties with the Richard Sherman interview. So here it is, my paper doll reenactment of Aaron Andrews' post-game interview with Richard Sherman. So let's watch that.
Thanks, Joe. Richard, can I ask you about the last play of the game?
Oh yeah, I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're gonna get. Don't you ever talk about me.
Who was talking about you?
Crabtree, don't you open your mouth about the best. I'ma shut you down real quick. LOB, oh yeah.
First want to apologize for my Macho Man voice. It's not that good, but I love it. Oh yeah, Macho, one of my all-time favorites. And yes, that was a steel chair that Richard Sherman hit paper doll Aaron Andrews with. In confession, I think that's the best Aaron Andrews has ever looked. And she's never coming on my show. She was never going to anyway, though, so I can really say, she's never going to see this. I can say whatever I want. She's a sideline reporter. It's not even a real job, although neither is YouTube talk show host, so only she's getting paid for hers, and I'm drawing pictures that are really terrible. Anyway, I loved that post-game interview. I know he's been referred to as a thug by many people for it, but I mean, it was raw, it was emotional. He's made the biggest play in the biggest game of his life up to that moment, and it was real. I loved it. I kind of wish there were more interviews like that. I mean, not everyone needs to reference pro wrestling the way he did, but Legion of Boom, baby. The only thing I don't like about the whole thing is that Crabtree himself, in the locker room when asked about it, kept running his mouth, claimed Richard Sherman was overrated, said he only made one play in the game, which is true. He did only make one play in the game, but it was the biggest play of the game, and he only made that one play because they only threw the ball at his direction twice, and that was the only one he needed to make. When you don't throw to his half of the field, he's not going to make the play. And when you make the mistake of throwing to his half of the field, he's going to make the play. Richard Sherman, best quarterback in the game. I love the fact that these two players don't like each other. Crabtree had been running his mouth, talking about it on Twitter, talking about it at a charity event. The best part of it is, unlike, say, the Manning-Brady rivalry you hear too much about, Manning and Brady are friends. They train together. They exchange text messages. Not true with Sherman and Crabtree. They cannot stand each other, and they will play at least twice this season as long as they are with their respective teams. And since they're both young players, that could be a long time. So get used to that matchup, guys. It's going to be awesome. I mean, and especially if they continue to meet in the playoffs, it'll be even better. Anyway, enough with that. Let's cut to Joe with his Super Bowl preview. Joe?
Hello, everyone. I'd first like to thank Greg for having me on his show today. It's a pleasure joining him for Morningwood. For those of you who don't know, I'm his younger brother, Joe, and some of you may have recognized me if you've scoured the depths of YouTube. You may have seen me with a little air band known as Legal Riot. Nothing much has changed. I'm still not wearing any pants. But anyway, I digress. What I'd really like to talk to you about today is the Super Bowl coming up tomorrow and my thoughts about it. I'm really excited for the matchup because I feel for the first time in probably quite a few years we truly get the two best teams in the league facing off. And that's what every fan of football should be rooting for every year. I'd like to start by talking about a couple of the matchups that I'm excited to watch tomorrow. The first is the Denver receiving corps against Seattle secondary. We all know all about the Richard Sherman-led Legion of Boom. They're tough, physical, they grind you down all game. And we've all heard all of the accolades for the Denver receiving corps, which features 4 receivers with 10-plus touchdowns. It's the first time that's ever happened in the NFL. And if you throw in the fact that Moreno had 10 on the ground as well, it's the first time any team's ever had 5 total players with 10-plus touchdowns, which is absolutely remarkable. What I'm interested to see with this matchup is the fact that Seattle is maybe the only secondary built to slow down the Peyton Manning-led Denver Broncos offense. They're big, they're tough, they're physical, they like to jam receivers at the line of scrimmage, which is exactly the way to slow down Peyton. He's an anticipation thrower who is often delivering the pass before the receiver even gets to his cut, let alone getting out of his cut. So the best way to defend against that is to make sure his receivers aren't where they're supposed to be. Peyton is a master on the field. He knows where everyone is going to be, or should be. He knows the timing of everything. And the best way to defend against a quarterback like that is to throw that timing off. Get him out of a rhythm, get his receivers out of a rhythm, and Seattle's great at that. However, we've seen all season long, John Fox and Peyton Manning have been masters of finding ways to get their receivers open. They've played teams that have tried to press them at the line, and no team does it as well as Seattle, but Denver also is the best team at using their picks and their rubs to get their receivers open. They have 2 tall, strong athletes on the outside with Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas, who both stand 6'3" and are both a load to try to handle on the outside. And they also have the ultimate slot/pick receiver in Wes Welker. And all season long, what they like to do is they like to run their slot receivers, their inside receivers, into an area on the field. They'll have them run outs, ins, whatever, and they take their route directly toward the defender play in press coverage against the outside receiver or the inside receiver, whichever way they want to go with it. And it causes the defenders to have to go around these picks. And it frees up the receivers, and they've done it masterfully all season. They're the best team at it, and you see it. They actually showed a lot in the red zone, getting Demarius and Julius Thomas open for back corner fades in the red zone constantly, and no other team does it as well as they do. And I expect we'll see a lot more creative play calling from Coach Fox and Peyton Manning all game to get separation for these receivers, and I think they will be able to do it. They've seen the Seattle secondary before, and I think they'll have some success there. Obviously, they're not going to put up 50 points on this defense, but they'll be able to score some touchdowns. The other matchup I'm excited for, I wrote about a little on the Cool Points website on our Super Bowl preview there. So go ahead and go check that out. Greg's got some bit there, and a couple of his friends have their takes as well. So you should go check that out. And the matchup is Terrence Knighton of Denver against the interior Seattle offensive line. Knighton's been a disruptive force all postseason and going add down the stretch in the regular season. He's big, strong, and he has shut down many running lanes against two of the best rushing teams going into the playoffs in New England and San Diego. They were running over people, and Terrence Knighton had none of it. Pot Roast just shut that down immediately. It'll be interesting to see because Seattle likes to use a bend play where they start to the A-hole and then they bend back to the B. It takes a little bit more time to develop with than other plays, and if Knighton is just busting through the middle of the line, that play is absolutely no good because they start to one side and then have to cross right across his face to try to get to the other hole. If Knighton plays as well as he has been, that play is not going to be there for Lynch at any point tonight or tomorrow. I expect they will have some success running the ball, but I believe that Knighton and this underrated Denver rushing defense will be able to hold Seattle to their postseason low in rushing yards. And I also think that Lynch will only have one touchdown, which ultimately I don't think is going to be enough for this Seattle offense. I believe Denver is still going to be able to put up 24 points. They're going to get 2 passing touchdowns, probably one to Moreno, and Matt Prater's probably going to hit like a 60-yard field goal because it's Matt Prater. And you're going to see them end the game with 24 points, a total that they have not allowed either of their first 2 playoff opponents to get to. 2 teams that featured much better offenses than Seattle's shown throughout the playoffs. They haven't been that good. Russell Wilson's been subpar, although he has the ability to go off. I'm not seeing it in this game. I think Denver wins. It'll still be a close game. Like I said, Lynch is still going to get in the end zone. So I'm thinking somewhere around 24-20. That's what I think the final score is going to be tomorrow. And Peyton Manning's going to get a second ring, cement his legacy as probably the best quarterback of all time. And it would be kind of cool to see him and Champ Bailey, right off in the sunset after their illustrious careers together with a Super Bowl championship. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. They're both 70 years old already, still playing, so they'll probably stick around for longer too. Anyway, I digress. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the game. One last thought is about the musical acts. Renee Fleming is doing the national anthem for the game, and I'm really excited to hear that. She's an amazing vocalist, opera singer. She's done some funny spots on late night shows where she's just done top 10 best opera lyrics, and she's really funny. She's great. The national anthem's going to be way better than it was last year, which was a travesty to watch. And the halftime show, Bruno Mars and Red Hot Chili Peppers, I wrote about this on the page as well, that Bruno Mars isn't the greatest in the world, but he collaborates well. His music flows well with other bands, so it'll be much better than the last 5 years or so. So keep an eye out on those. I might not get to see any of that because I don't have cable. But anyway, send this back over to Greg and let him continue with his show now that I'm done rambling for almost 9 minutes. Have a great morning, everyone. And again, thanks to Greg for having me on his show. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun to do.
Thanks, Joe. Really, really want to thank my brother Joe for being part of that. Excellent analysis from Joe. I think he's one of the best sports minds I know, and I love talking sports with him. If you were to flip through our text messages, there's countless sports conversations between him and I love his mind when it comes to sports. I think he looks at the aspects so well. I think he demonstrated there how much he analyzes the matchups. And he's great at that. And he was dead right about the matchup. This is the best matchup in a long, long time. The first time I can remember in a while that it was the best team from each conference, and really the two best teams in football, which hasn't happened in a while. And part of that is the two best teams in football have been coming from the same conference lately, but not this time. You have a historically great defense, and like statistically the best offense of all time. I mean, as Joey pointed out, those 5 players with 10 or more touchdowns, phenomenal. I mean, Manning shattered touchdown records this year. So this is the dream matchup. You have the best offense versus the best defense and the two best teams. What Joe didn't mention was the strength of schedule. Seattle's strength of schedule is far and away much tougher than Denver's. So those 13-3 records that they both shared, I think that Seattle's has a little more weight to it. I mean, playing in the NFC West is a battle for 6 games. Those 4 teams, I mean, from top to bottom, they're one of the most physical teams in the league. No offense to the AFC West, Denver and Kansas City were both great this year, but they would have suffered more losses had they played in that NFC West. It's not a doubt in my mind that that's the best conference in football, and that coming out of the NFC West means something. The one thing he did get into was the matchups. The biggest matchup is going to be between the receivers and the cornerbacks. It's just how it is. And one thing Seattle has going for it, other than the physicality, which is huge, but is the type of defense they run. Since they do a cover 3 zone, they're going to have the 2 cornerbacks and then Earl Thomas, the best safety in the game by far, in the middle coverage, deep. So those picks that Denver runs better than possibly anyone in the history of the game aren't going to be as effective in this zone coverage because they're not going to play tight man. What they're going to do is they're going to bump at the line with the underneath zones, and then they're give them that cushion. That's how the zone works, and it's going to be especially effective against this Denver team. I'm not saying that they will always be in zone, because once you get in that red zone and you run out of space, you can't do that deep cover 3 zone. So you'll see man-to-man, and that is when you want to be looking for the picks. New England showed it when they beat Denver in the regular season, and they showed it in the early parts of the games in that AFC Championship. If you are physical with those receivers and you throw off the routes, it causes trouble. The thing that the Patriots did wrong was that after Welker laid out Talib with varying degrees of legal football plays, your opinions are your opinions on that. I love the play. I love Wes Welker. He's the best at what he does. But when he made that hit, it crushed that New England secondary. They didn't come out as physical. That won't happen to Seattle. You can take out one of those guys in Seattle, and the rest of the team is going to stay just as aggressive, and they're just going to stay just as nasty. They will get a lot of penalties. They will get a lot of penalties for 2 reasons. One, they're playing Peyton Manning, and the NFL has favorites. All sports do, and favorites kind of get the benefit of the calls. So there will be a lot of penalties for that reason. And the bigger reason is that's how Seattle plays. They're the most penalized game in football, and they're not going to change. They will accept those penalties because those penalties will be either questionable pass interference calls and holding calls, obviously terrible pass interference and holding calls, and really, really obvious pass interference and holding calls. And there will be pass interference and holding calls that are missed as well, because that's how the Seattle secondaries play. They're rough, they're tough, they make you earn every catch. They make you earn every jog down the field even, and they're going to make those Denver receivers work for it, which will make Peyton Manning's life more difficult because, as Joey said, he's a precision route guy. He is throwing that ball to get to the place where his receivers should be. And his receivers know that, and they'll run those routes the best they can. It's not going to be easy for them. The one thing about pressuring Peyton Manning that teams do wrong is they often adjust their defense to try and get more players rushing Peyton Manning. And that's a mistake. Yes, you definitely want to hit Peyton Manning and you want to hit him as much as you can. You want to pressure him. He cannot scramble. He is the least mobile quarterback in the history of all-time great quarterbacks. He can't get out of the pocket. He can't scramble. So you want to get that pressure, but you do not want to change your defense. And Seattle won't. They know what got them there, and they're going to stick to it. They're just going to send their regular pass rushers, who their regular pass rushers were great. So they will send their regular pass rushers, and they will drop their other guys still into coverage. And that's the right move here. It's what got you to the Super Bowl. It's what made you the best team in the NFL. It's what made you one of the best defenses of all time. So you have to do it. And as I said, the red zone is where it's going to get really fun because of those matchups. And it's going to get really physical in the red zone. Interesting thing about the red zone is that this season, Denver was the best red zone offense, scoring roughly 5.5 points per game. I think it was 5.6. We're going to go with 5.5 because it illustrates a fun little thing. The league average for that is 4.5 points per red zone trip. So Denver was a full point over the league average. Interestingly enough, Seattle, of course, was the best red zone defense, allowing only 3.5 points per game, or points per red zone trip for their opponents. So you have the exact average of those two to be the average of the league, which I found to be an awesome little stat there. So that red zone battle is going to be great. And it further illustrates what Joe said before and what I said about the matchup. This is being the two best teams. I mean, the best offense versus the best defense. And that stat is a perfect illustration of it. What it is going to come down to, it's going to be the run game. Joey thinks Marshawn Lynch is only going to have 1 touchdown. I predicted 3 touchdowns. And it might be a little high. I had 3 touchdowns for 180 yards, but I think he's going to have a lot of his power pellets. And then he's going to be rained on by his power pellets. I think he's going to have touchdown runs of 30 and 40 and 2 yards. I'm not saying exactly 30 and 40. It might be 34. It might be 42. And then he'll have a 2 or 3 yard touchdown run as well, which will keep the ball out of Peyton Manning's hands. It'll help give Russell Wilson a cushion. I love Wilson, but so far in the playoffs, he's been pedestrian at best. He's putting like Mark Sanchez type numbers up, which I'm a Jets fan. I can tell you, you do not want Mark Sanchez type numbers from your quarterback. Although to Mark Sanchez's credit, he's got an all-time great playoff record, so that is what it is. But I think Wilson will do enough. I know Joey's expecting a terrible game from him, predicted him on the website to be the least valuable player. But I think that Wilson will have a sufficient day. I think probably about 200 yards. I don't know that he'll score, but I think either Baldwin or Tate will have a big 40 or 50 yard play. They will do just enough with that pass game to keep Denver from being able to stack up the box. And Joey's right about the rush defense, and that's Joey to only me, not you. He is Joe or Joseph to you. But he is right about the underrated Denver pass or rush defense. But I don't think they're going to be enough to stop Marshawn Lynch. He's going to go into beast mode, and he's going to run people over. It's what he does. I don't think any running back in football today enjoys running people over the way Marshawn Lynch does. I think the only player that thrives on contact as much as Marshawn Lynch is Cowboys' all-time great receiver, Jason Witten, who you watch him and he just seems to love lowering his shoulder to get those extra yardage. So Marshawn Lynch is going to run over the Denver defense, I think. I might be a little high with my predictions, but don't be surprised if Monday you're like, wow, Greg was right on. Don't be surprised also if I was off. I mean, I host a YouTube morning show called Morning Wood, so I'm not the person to ask this stuff. But yeah, it's going to come down to the running game. And Marino's been great, don't get me wrong. Those 10 touchdowns were not a fluke. Best running game Peyton Manning has ever had. No offense to Edgerrin James, I love Edge. But Marino and that Denver running game, better than anything Peyton Manning had in Indianapolis. Going to be a great matchup. I'm excited for it. I want to thank Joey for coming in and giving his analysis. I thought it was spot on. Only thing he got wrong was the winner. His point total is probably about right with 24-20, but reverse the teams. I'll have Seattle at 24. I'm going to have Denver at 20. I don't think kicking is going to be a factor. The only thing that might come into play is going to be the wins, but the win shouldn't be that bad. But Seattle, does have the advantage when it comes to the win because they were practicing in the Giants Stadium right across the street, and Denver has been in the Jets practice stadium, so they've had to travel to New York for their practice. They're probably staying in New York, but that will be a slight advantage to the kicking game for Seattle. But I don't see the wins being a factor, and as much has been made about Peyton Manning in cold weather games, and rightfully so, at kickoff time, if the temperature is 32 degrees or less, Peyton Manning is 0-7. That's not a fluke. That's fact. He throws up some bad games in cold weather. But what he did this year was the glove. He's been wearing it all season, so he doesn't have to adjust to it for the cold weather game. He had that season with the glove, so that will help. And kickoff time, the temperature should be about 36 degrees is what I read yesterday. So cold weather is not going to be too much of a factor. And you hear about the disadvantage of the cold weather, but it's not really a disadvantage. It really just takes away the advantage for a dome team. Well, I mean, let's get that straight. Football is an outdoor cold weather game. So the dome gives an advantage. Cold weather doesn't give a disadvantage. That, of course, might be just my opinion, but hey, that's how I feel about it. Bring on the cold weather games. I love me some cold weather games. And in this day and age, with the way the technology and the training goes with athletes, unless you're playing in whiteout conditions or you're playing in a monsoon, the only real element that's a factor is the wind. Ball will be a little more dense because of the cold. Take a couple of yards off a pass, take a couple of yards off a kick. Won't be that big of a deal. These guys are professionals. But cold weather Manning is significantly less. But I don't think that's going to be as big of a factor. He's ready for it this year. Been playing in Denver for a couple of years, so they get some cold weather out at Mile High Stadium. So, as I said, 24-20 Seattle. I'm just going to reverse the names behind the scores that Joe had. And once again, thank you to Joe. And do, after you finish watching this video, of course, do look up Legal Riot on YouTube. See my brother without pants, since he was only waist up on that video. Next, I want to cut to the beautiful April, a good friend from back when we were youngins. She was in the Final Four for the December Miss Playboy, an online competition, win a Playboy photo shoot. Gorgeous, gorgeous woman, and so graciously agreed to give us her own Super Bowl preview. So let's take it to April for that. April?
Guys, April Marie here. This afternoon I am here to talk about Super Bowl 48 with the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks. With the Denver Broncos coming in with one of the best offense in the league and the Seattle Seahawks coming in with one of the best defense in the league, I'm guaranteeing it's going to be a very, very close game. Even though they always say that defense wins championships, I believe with Peyton Manning at the helm after his stellar season that he's had under his belt, I think that my predictions will be a 27-24 victory for the Broncos. Not picking any favorites, but that's my prediction for the game. So I hope you all are enjoying your Super Bowl Sunday and have a good night.
just want to thank April for that preview. It was awesome. Everything I had hoped for when she agreed to do that for me. And really want to thank her for classing up the joint. I do have an interesting story about April. Not only, I mean, as you can see, she's a beautiful woman, but she's also one of the kindest and most genuine people I had the pleasure of going to school with. We ran indoor track together. Yes, this ran track, I know. But we ran indoor track together, and one year, I think it was probably my junior year of high school, I was battling either a cold or a flu. I don't remember the sickness, and this is back in the days of AOL Instant Messenger. And her and I are chatting, and I mentioned the fact that I wasn't feeling well, and I must have mentioned I didn't have cold or flu medicine. And so April, bless her heart, the next day comes into school with a bottle of NyQuil for me, which I never had the heart to tell her I don't believe that I have interesting reactions to antihistamines. So I never did take the NyQuil, but it spent the rest of that year in my locker, and actually stayed with me for a few years. I took it to SUNY Plattsburgh with me for one semester at SUNY Plattsburgh, and I think that's when I finally got rid of it, when one of the guys on my floor had the flu, so I let him use my NyQuil that April was so kind to give me. And just awesome, awesome person. So I want you to, everyone, just go check out, it's playboymsssocial.com, and you can search for April Marie, and she'll pop right up. Or the link right to her page is down in the comments section, along with the link to her Facebook page, not her personal Facebook page, but her Playboy Miss Social modeling page. She should be running again in April, I believe, is what she told me. So if you kill a lot of time on the internet, which you must if you're watching my crappy YouTube show, give her support. It would be wonderful, gorgeous woman. Who wouldn't want to see her in Playboy, right? And one of the nicest people, as I said, that I've ever met. I really want to thank her for being part of this, for lowering herself to my standards for the day. That's just how nice she is. And you also notice a link down there, once again, for my dear friend Kat's project, the Millennial Train Project, where she is going to visit bookstores and libraries and communities to see how they're interacting using social media. She is almost halfway to her goal. She needs just a little, I think 2,600 right now, which say we average 90 views here. So we're looking at $25 a person roughly. I donated 50 myself, which is the Slaughterhouse 5, and she's wonderful gifts, like you can get a postcard or a gift from one of the spots for the donation. Really, really, really appreciate it. Even if you can't donate it, click the link, share the link on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Google Plus if you still use Google Plus or started Google Plus. We're tentatively calling it the Reading Railroad, which thank you actually to Joe, who threw out that suggestion when I threw out the cry to help to my good friend Josh, who regulars know from my first episode, and actually another friend named Josh. So Joe, crucial today with his Super Bowl, crucial to the name. So please, there should be about 14 days left as of this taping to donate. Anything you can spare would be wonderful. Great experience for Kat. And as I said before, the website will be an amazing resource for not just here in Pittsburgh, but local bookstores and local stores all over the country to see how others are interacting. Because as I said before, I think it's crucial for small businesses to be part of the community. I love this project from Kat. I know I'm biased, being the fact that she's one of my best friends and my landlord, but I do feel that this is the best project out up there for auction. 2 people have made their goals, so please, please donate. Definitely share, even if you can't donate. That's really, really appreciated. Get the word out. This project is fantastic. That's about all I have. Please enjoy the game. We will be having breakfast pizza over our place and Skittles to the face like crazy. And as you know, Saturday morning leads to Saturday night. And I'm always in the dancing mood, I'm not gonna lie, but because the Super Bowl's tomorrow, you wanna get amped and you wanna stay amped. So for that, I'm suggesting Against Me, Searching for a Form of Clarity, one of my favorite albums of all time from one of my favorite bands. If you're lucky enough to have the vinyl like I am, play it, just rage a little bit, and get yourself amped up for what should be a fantastic Super Bowl tomorrow. And I will once again be back next week. I hopefully will have Joe back for Bachelor Living, if he'll be so gracious to join me again. And we'll have the second Celebrity Chair Chit Chat, where the beautiful Anna Kendricks will be sitting in my dining room with me, kinda. And we'll have an interview with her. So you'll see me swoon pretty hardcore with that. So I'll be here. I hope you'll join me.